My grandmother passed away, and now I am seeing the true nature of her side of the family, including my mom, thanks to my grandfather, who is now being alienated and antagonized by them. I'm posting here because I need to let this out somewhere. Thank you all who decided to read this because I know it's long. On the 29th of December, my grandmother passed away. She was my rock growing up and an amazing person all around. Her death hit me hard, and it felt like a piece of me disappeared when I found out about her passing. Naturally, my mother and her two siblings are also heartbroken. Some background. My grandfather was the stepfather of my mom and her two siblings, aunt and uncle. He and my grandma were married 35 years and had just retired. They moved to a small retirement community to be close to their younger grandkids, my grandfather's bio daughter's children. They had plans to travel as well. Unfortunately, my grandmother's health declined within 2 years. She developed emphysema, had asthma, and very low oxygen to the point of needing an oxygen tank 24/7 and started declining mentally. All through this, my grandfather took care of her in their home till the very end. He took amazing care of her and refused to have any kind of assistance despite him having to physically carry her at times. She passed away in her sleep, and he said he was relieved she was no longer suffering. My grandfather is a very blunt man and has never been one to sugarcoat. He is also very pragmatic, which rubs some people the wrong way, but he always means well. My grandmother loved him, and he took amazing care of my mom and her siblings. He paid for my mom's college books, no question, when her biological father wouldn't. He called up an attorney friend to bail my aunt out of jail when she was drunk and crashed into a police car, having a suspended license, etc., and helped my uncle countless times when he was struggling with a cocaine addiction. The list goes on. The man was rough around the edges, but never hesitated to help because, in his words, that's just what you do for family. Now on to the conflict. My grandmother was known to have a lot of expensive jewelry. Real gold, diamonds, pearls, Rolex, etc. Sadly, she also had a gambling addiction. This led her to pawn off most of it. The most valuable piece she had left was her wedding ring, which was a real diamond that my grandfather bought for her in Dubai. She spent 4 hours handpicking the diamond, and it was worth $14,000 in Dubai $18,000 in the US, and this was back in 1989. After she passed, my mom and aunt were asking my grandfather about the ring. It's important to note, 1. My mother would never actually wear a diamond that massive. She isn't a jewelry person and works with horses, so wearing something that big makes no sense. 2. My aunt also does not wear jewelry and never even visited my grandmother much when they lived in the same city. My grandfather refused to give either one of them the ring, and they're both angry with him. They both said that it should stay within the family as though he isn't part of it at all. Mind you, they have only been bringing up the price of the ring, and not once have mentioned wanting it because it was their mother's. My grandfather and mom got into a huge argument over it. When my mom was telling me about this, I at first thought it was odd that they were so fixated on this ring when I have never heard them mention it before. Being the person I am, I thought they would want to wear it or for the sentimental value. But hearing her say it was worth $18,000 and not once saying anything sentimental about it rubbed me the wrong way. She was going on about how he would just sell it and was disrespecting my grandmother's wishes to give it to my aunt. My grandfather said that it was never on paper, so why should he believe them? Honestly, I agree. I also personally thought my aunt didn't deserve it because she never treated my grandmother that well and never visited her when she was sick despite having weekends off, which would give her time to visit. She is also very well off and so could afford it. I heard my mom's side of the story and finally interjected. I asked her, does it not occur to you that he wants to keep it because it's the symbol of his marriage to his wife of 35 years whom he just lost? This isn't just her ring. It was their ring, and you guys are turning it into a blood diamond. She genuinely looked taken aback and said, I guess that could be true. It was crazy to me that my mother never thought of it this way. I thought she was better than that. After this, she let it go and stopped talking about it. I could tell she felt guilty, which put my disgust to rest. That was until I heard my grandfather's side of the story. I went to visit him yesterday to spend time together. Despite him being my mother's stepfather, he has always been my grandfather as far as I was concerned. He was there when I was born, and I never questioned him being my real grandfather. We have always had a good relationship, and he has always spoken to me like an adult. When I got to his house, he was venting about the hell he went through with my grandmother's gambling addiction and how astounded he was at my mom and aunt's behavior the past 2 weeks. He also said that my aunt knew about her addiction for years before he found out himself, and that he could have gotten her help before she ended up in massive debt. But I wasn't prepared for what he told me about the fight he had with my mom. He said that when she brought up the ring, he immediately shut her down. She proceeded to yell at him and bring up the fact that my grandmother wanted my aunt to have it. When he asked why my grandmother never told him that, My mom said that it was a Cuban custom, my grandma was Cuban, to pass down a mother's wedding ring to their youngest daughter, which would be my aunt. I have literally never heard of this Cuban custom in my life. Even if it were true, my grandfather pointed out that he is Pakistani and therefore it isn't a part of his customs. When my mom fought back on this, he said that if that were the case and it should apply to all of them, then it would really have to go to his bio daughter who is younger than my aunt. He said that she was excluding his whole side of the family as though they didn't grow up with his kids like they were bio siblings, and the fact that my grandmother raised his kids like they were her own. He turned to his daughter, also my aunt, but wording it this way to differentiate, who was there, and asked, "Do you want this ring? It rightfully belongs to you according to your sisters." She said no, she doesn't wear jewelry and wouldn't want to sell it, so it would just be sitting around. He said he knew it was purely for the monetary value of the ring. He pointed out that my mom never even suggested having it for me whenever I decided to get married, which he knew my grandmother would approve of. I told him it wouldn't be fair for him to give up something with so much sentimental meaning behind it. After I said this, he told me, "I remember every minute of it. We were at the jeweler for 4 hours while she looked at every diamond and tried on the sample rings. I remember every smile, every laugh, and how happy she was while picking it out. I remember how happy I was that I could make her that happy." I nearly started crying because I heard this stoic man get choked up. He truly values the ring for more than just the price, but isn't the type to express it. He said that if he cared so much about the cost and wanted to sell it, he would have done so already. I knew my mom and aunt were frugal, but all of this brought to the surface just how much they valued money above all else. He said he felt bad for me and always told my grandmother so. He could see that I was someone with a big heart and intelligence, that I was getting all the wrong advice from her side of the family when it came to college and my career path, because they only valued money. Whenever I brought up wanting to study music or be a teacher, their responses were always, "Those don't make any money. You should be a lawyer or a nurse." Naturally, I would take those words to heart, but that led me to having no idea what to do with my life, and so I never even finished school. I spent years feeling like a complete failure. He said he was never allowed to speak to me on this directly because it wasn't his place, according to my grandma's side. He said my happiness should have been prioritized, and that I was a passionate person who would have excelled just doing something I loved, that my sensitive nature was being stifled for the hope of monetary success. He said he was thankful I have more of my dad's side in me. I had never felt so validated in my entire life. This man truly saw me and in reality knew what was best for me, but was never allowed to speak on it. My heart broke to hear that. Not only was this whole ordeal unfolding, but when it came to writing my grandmother's obituary, my aunt and mother's contempt shined. I had told them we needed an obit for her, and for them to write drafts for me to edit. My aunt wrote first and didn't even mention my grandfather or her step-siblings. When my mother wrote her version, she excluded her step-siblings as well. I rewrote the whole thing to include more details about my grandmother and her great qualities, her struggles, and her love for my grandpa and his kids. She even loved his ex-wife, whom she helped through cancer treatment. There was no solid reason for my mom and aunt to be so cold. As for my uncle, he's a lost cause in all of this. He wrote nothing and never even called my grandpa to give his condolences. Sorry for the novel of a post, but I needed to get it out. I'm so saddened to see the true nature of my family. My grandma had flaws but was still loving and encouraging. My grandfather kept quiet to keep the peace within the family. It's also F***ed LOL, but hey, at least I know I am not flawed. I just wasn't surrounded by people who shared my same empathy and sensitivity.